My name is Laura Clark.
And I'm Taylor Strang.
And you're listening to Blood Spill. So, Taylor and I decided that we wanted to create a podcast together, and what better way of it than to be true crime, because we're both very intrigued in that.
My favorite thing in the world is figuring out who the true villains are and who are the heroes, and what better way than going straight to the true crime.
Yeah, for real. So thank you for joining us. Today's episode is going to be on Amanda Knox. How did you find out about Amanda Knox?
So, I spent my entire childhood with my grandparents, and we would always watch Lifetime shows. So, when they moved away, that was my favorite pastime. Going on to Lifetime and seeing what I could watch and anything cheesy or because Lifetime was a big thing for bringing people's stories and bringing it onto this TV. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And in 2011, I remember watching this, and I saw a movie, and it had Hayden Panettiere in it, and I was a big Brigadon fan. So I just started watching it, and it happened to be Amanda Knox. In 2011, at 11 years old, I was so intrigued by the true crime and really the actress that played in it. I had no idea what it was.
Right.
And that's how I found out about this, and it stuck with me for almost 9 years.
Wow. Yeah. So I never really knew about Amanda Knox. I'm a big fan in true crime and watching that. So when you showed me this, I was like, oh wow, I've never really heard about this girl. And watching the documentary on Netflix was pretty interesting. Like, it got juicy later on for sure.
Yes, 100%. Because in Lifetime they cut everything out. It's more focused on the Italian sense,
Right.
and the actual sexualization of them. So watching the documentary was crazy to hear all the actual evidence that they have.
Right. Yeah. So in the beginning of this documentary, it shows you the 2nd of November in 2007, and what really caught my attention was the timestamp was 3:13 in the afternoon. If anyone's wondering, they put it military time, so it was 15:13. But they just kind of bring you through as if you walked into this house and it's the house was destroyed, the window was broken, there was blood in the bathroom, right? In the sink and the bath mat, she said.
Yeah, and I noticed that too. And also, one thing I really enjoyed was it being kind of because I noticed that it was kind of found footage type, because it was hand cameras. They were carrying around camcorders the entire time. And what really stood out to me was that in the first minute, they showed the body.
Yeah.
There was nothing going up to it. You could hear them talking, you could hear them going, oh shit, talking about how actually crazy this crime scene was.
Yeah. And
seeing up close, it was insane.
And for anyone watching or listening, they didn't even show the body, it was just her foot wrapped in a blanket, which was really weird.
Yeah, it was just they wanted shock value. That was what that part was.
Yeah.
In the documentary.
Yeah. So time goes on. We find out that Amanda Knox is an American and she went to Italy to go to school. She had 2 roommates, I believe, right? Or was it just Meredith, the one who was murdered, the victim?
It was more than Meredith. It was let me see. I believe it was she lived with Meredith and 2 other women.
Right.
Because Meredith was English and the other 2 women were Italian.
Right. Yeah, Meredith was actually from Britain, I believe. Mm-hmm. She was British. She could speak English, but she was British. She's from the UK. And in the beginning of this, I think 10 minutes in, you can really see how Amanda's just trying to prove her innocence. She's like, I'm not the one that killed her. I didn't do this. She was just proving it.
Yeah, and it was so I found it really ironic and funny that as they're how she's explaining her innocence, and when they're showing her in the kitchen, kind of with her voiceover, and she's talking about being guilty and not guilty, she said, if I'm not innocent, that means everyone else is vulnerable because that means anyone could have done this if everything points to me and I didn't do it." And when she's shown in the kitchen, she's actually making Italian food, which I found hilarious for some reason.
Yeah. Also, when you're saying that, how she, like, tries to prove that she's the same as everyone, but she also says that she considers herself different. Before she went to Italy, she was there with her family and talking, and she said, "I consider myself different. So what better way to get out of my personal bubble, and go across the world to learn?"
Yeah. Can I bring up something that really bugged me about the entire documentary, especially in the beginning?
What's that?
They she all they did, like, in the first 4 minutes, they started sexualizing her and making people feel guilty for deviant sex, they said, and that really bothered me, and that's a huge theme with throughout the entire documentary. Did you
Yeah.
notice that?
Yeah. In one part of it, they called it a sex game gone wrong.
Yes,
And I don't exactly see how you can consider those two to be the same thing, in my opinion.
especially since it was a
Right.
rape, but we aren't there yet. We're not gonna get there yet.
Yeah,
But
not yet, not yet. So, more about Amanda. She thought like this school would be like a huge master's degree and she'd have to get really involved, but she said it was easy, right? Kind of something like that.
yeah, she said there was barely any work and all she did and so she got a job.
At the La Chic, I think it's called.
The La Chic, yes, it was an Italian bar run by, Patrick.
Yes, Patrick. And so they also, I remember this. She was saying how like in America, not to get off topic, but in America she was just this cute girl, but then in Italy she was this beautiful American, beautiful blonde American.
Yes, a hot
And that
commodity,
and that's why Patrick pretty much hired her to get more people in.
and I think that was her downfall in the entire murder as well.
Right, right. So then she goes on, I think she goes to some kind of like music thing. I can't
Yeah,
remember.
she goes to I believe it was either a ballet or an opera,
Yeah. So
and she meets a love interest,
yeah, Raphael.
as I like to call him, Roth, throughout the
Roth.
entire I've just been writing Roth because because you know me, my dyslexia goes crazy. I just read out Roth the entire time. That's how I refer to him.
It's funny that you said that because I spelt it out raffle. But oh well. Um
No, but
so
my you can go.
oh sorry. So she meets this guy named Raphael, she kind of falls in love with him, being 20, you find your love interest and you're there for it. But and then after they're talking about this during the documentary, it shoots right back into the house. And something that I wrote down was that one of the forensic people said, "Make sure you shoot the body bag if it comes out."
Yes, I actually wrote that down, and I wrote that it was a disgusting portray of the press.
Yeah,
That and it was justified how they portrayed the press. They they didn't see a innocent girl become murdered. They saw a way to make money and make the front page. And the police noticed that. Um, but I found that utterly disgusting.
they shouldn't have, just for the decency for the family and the body, of course. Like, don't do that.
Exactly. Yeah, and I also I really am intrigued by what happens or and how were the victims killed because that shows a lot about the the murder, and it shows a lot about who did it. And they kept saying that if a crime scene shows neglect, that it's most likely someone who did it out of rage and didn't even worry about killing. Like the
Right.
killing, they just didn't worry about evidence, they just left. And they said that there was a lot of blood, nothing was cleaned up. There was human feces in the toilet. They didn't even care to cover up that, but they cared to cover up her body.
And in that they said, oh, a man would never care about covering up a female's body. Only a female who would have done this harm would have covered up the body, which I find that to be not true in some sense.
I actually understood that, because it's because I see it as when men do such a crime, like they said her throat was slit, she was held down by her arms, there was sexual trauma, and when men commit sexual trauma, they don't tend to try to cover up the body because women's bodies are sexualized. So they
Right.
tend to just leave it. You know what I mean? But when a woman goes through that and commits the act that has happened to Meredith, they tend to at least have 1 ounce of remorse where they cover the body because they would want it to happen to them. They would want their body to be covered. Do you know what I mean?
Right, 100%. But, he automatically thought, okay, Amanda Knox would be the murderer because only females would cover up the body of another female during a murder, which is like, there you go again, wrongfully committing somebody without full proof.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. What you're saying is that they were trying to pin it on Amanda in any way they could.
Yeah, automatically.
Yeah, and one thing that really I wanna talk about the head prosecutor, McNeely,
Mm-hmm.
and one, I wanna say his red glasses were everything. They just showed me his true form, but he but the entire time I felt like he did everything he could to press it on Amanda. He stated how do you believe that how she acted with Raphael after the murder? Like when they were showing by the cameras how she was acting, did you find that inappropriate in any way? Their
um
affection towards each other?
Yeah, for me personally, I think that was kind of iffy. Because like you just find out that your best friend died. Well, not even your best friend, a roommate, someone that you lived with. Don't you think you would kind of be like in shock value a little bit? Like,
I mean,
oh my god.
everybody grieves in different ways, and honestly, I like, yes, it did look suspicious, and yes, sh she could have handled that in a different way, but I also believe that, people grieve in different ways, and maybe her way of grieving was being comforted by the man that she enjoyed. Can I just say that her and Raph knew each other for 5 days before the murder, and so
And
that's the only yeah, 5 days.
that's that's crazy.
Yeah, like, 5 days before the murder. And yes, that's iffy because, like, say if, like, you murdered someone and you murdered me, okay? And Curtis was there. You would 100% be, like, snuggled up to Curtis, like, holding on to Curtis, you know what I mean? But the way she acted was kinda suspicious in the way of not the way she was grieving, but with who she was grieving with.
Right. At least for me, like if I find out that you died, like I'd be a hot mess, of course. But I don't know, I just feel like she just kind of sat there. I felt like there was no sympathy or empathy on her face at all. And of course, people do grieve differently and people do have their own ways of feeling that way. But in a sense, like you got to come to reality and see that, oh shit, someone that I've spent a couple months with living together side by side every day, seeing them every day, they're no longer here.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but also she knew Meredith for only a couple weeks. It's not like lifelong, like, she barely saw Meredith due to her classes and her job. So, like, of course, it looks weird, but I don't think it was enough to make them suspicious of her in any way.
Right. Yeah. To an
Um,
extent.
yeah, to an extent, yes, but for me, I know that people can shut down and act weird when they grieve, so
Right.
that's my idea of it. Can we talk about how attractive Nick Pisa was? The main journalist throughout the entire documentary.
Oh. I wasn't a big fan.
I wasn't a big fan of his personality and his job, but I liked the suit.
Hey, supposedly she went home after being at Raphael's house. Roth for short, that's what we're calling him. Uh, and she says she comes in and she's like, "Oh man, I really just want to take a shower." So she goes in, she sees blood on the sink, and then she's like, "You know what? Maybe someone just cut themselves. Whatever." So she goes
Like, there's
into the
100 women living in the house, and they all have to shave, you know what I mean?
on the sink on the faucet on the kitchen
I don't
sink.
know, maybe they're shaving their face, I don't know, like, if I saw blood on my sink, I wouldn't even worry about it. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I mean not on the sink, yeah. I wouldn't really care. I'd be like, whatever."
I'd be,
But
like,
then
confused, but
yeah, like why didn't y'all fucking clean up after yourselves? But but then she says she goes in the shower and she gets out of the shower, then sees the blood on the bath mat. That's where that would raise my concerns. Like,
yes.
hmm. There's a lot
I
of blood there.
I found it really funny how the only time she realized that something might be suspicious, because the door's open. Oh, like, someone probably left it open. That's fine. Oh, like, it's kinda messy, but, oh, it's okay, I have roommates. Goes in, blood everywhere. Oh, nothing. But there's poop in the toilet, and that's when she gets suspicious that something happened? Like, oh, oh, no, like, really? That's when she starts getting suspicious?
Said it creeped her out that there was poop in the toilet.
I honestly, that's when I was like, "Come on, Amanda. You are better
You
than
took
this."
a shower and then you saw the poop in the toilet? You didn't smell that? What the
I
heck?
And then she left and got and asked Raph to come back, and he walks in, he's like, "What is this? There's glass all over the floor." Like, he notices things, and, like, me, I'd probably walk in and honestly, like, be oblivious as well, but, like, I'd walk in and be like, "Who broke my window? Why is the door open?" And, oh, like, and Meredith's door is locked. Meredith never locks her door. Like, I
Yeah.
found it why didn't she check on her roommates? Knocked on the door. Like, who took a shit and did not flush?
Which one of
Like,
you took a shit and did not flush?
I'm sorry, but
Disgusting!
like, if someone didn't flush in my house, I'm going to ask them who it was. But she didn't even care. Like, why didn't Why
Why?
didn't she check on her roommates before she went? Like, I get it, like, oh, there's someone in the house, like, she thought someone was in the house, like, she went to go get her, like, boyfriend of 5 days. Okay. But my first thing would be like, "Oh, let me go check. Let me go check on Laura." Like, maybe she pooped and didn't feel good and went to lay down. I don't know. But
Oh
that's the
my
one thing
god.
that stuck with me, like, you really that was the only thing you focused on, not the blood, not the everything being disheveled. Like,
Nope, just that poop was in the toilet.
where
Oh,
was she
jeez.
where was her other roommates?
I don't know, they didn't say that. I don't believe. I haven't picked it
They
up at
said
least.
she had roommates, but the only, like, suspect was her.
Right.
You know what?
Maybe
Other roommates, I'm suspicious of you.
maybe the other roommates were, like, out of the country, or, like, they lived in Italy, they were from Italy, so maybe they just went home and, they didn't wanna be part of the
Probably,
documentary, and they had alibis that cleared their name, so of course they're not gonna worry
probably.
about them, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
And it also
so
talks about how Raph was like, "Why did she take a shower?" Like, Raph was even just like, "Why did you do this and
yeah,
not have anxiety?"
right. Have no anxiety, right. So she calls Raph, Raph comes over, and he looks through everything and he's pretty much like, yo, what the hell? Like, what's going on with you? So he ended up being the one calling the police and saying that his room or her roommate's door is locked and he can't get in. He's tried busting it down a couple times, can't get in. Meredith isn't answering, right? So they call the police show up and they're like, get the fuck out of the house. We're investigating this now. You know?
Yeah.
So they bust in and they find her body wrapped up in a blanket, and that's where they say, oh, females would do this, not males. And they come out and tell her that Meredith's throat has been slit,
Yeah. And they start talking about the break-in and how it didn't, and how when they were investigating, they didn't see any footprints on the wall, meaning no one climbed the wall, or the door was open, and there was a broken lock. And that was my first thought. If Amanda was in the house and she was guilty, why didn't she just use her key?
They said that it looked staged.
Yeah, but at the same time, you can also stay, like, just leave the door open. You know what I mean?
Right, but at the same time, would that look enough evidence? If you think about it, you're planning a murder, right? And you're like, how am I gonna plan a murder in my own house? Obviously, I would just walk in and walk right out, right? So why not just throw like a rock in the window, look like someone broke in, blah blah blah. I'm not planning any murders. I'm just saying, I'm thinking from the outside in. For anyone's like, yo, check that bitch real quick.
Yeah, and I don't know, like, from the beginning, I had a real weird feeling about, like, how everything was going in
Yeah.
the entire thing. Like, the investigator was very biased. The press, starting from the press, they, as soon as they found out about, like, her being naked, they called it, like, a sex game.
Yep, a
And
sex game gone wrong.
yeah, and they didn't have a murder weapon, nothing, but 2 days they knew it was a knife, and then 2 days later, they asked Amanda to come back into the house.
Yep. And they open up the drawer and they're like, all right, look at all these knives and tell me which one is missing. And she gets overwhelmed, she says.
And understandably, you know what I mean? You're being asked to go into your house saying, "What's the murder weapon?" And you clearly know that they think it's you. And
Right.
they said that she was hysterically crying, hands over her ears, like she had a memory. But honestly, in that sense, it's not a memory, it's you thinking what could have happened.
Right, you could be definitely blocking out and not knowing what the heck you're doing, because that's what trauma does.
Yeah, and because of that, they made her a suspect.
Yep. Instantly. They didn't care.
No, they said they wanted a suspect because the press wanted someone to blame.
Right. Like they had to that day, but they didn't have enough answers.
Can we talk
So,
about the call between her and Brett?
yeah. Like
Her
what?
friend, obviously oblivious to the entire world.
Oh, yeah, yeah. She didn't know. I feel like she didn't know.
Oh, come on, she knew. It's international news.
Yeah,
And like,
yeah,
if
but
you hear, "Oh, my friend's at the—"
do you watch news? Do you like turn on the news every day and watch it?
I mean, no, but this is in 2007, what else are they going to do?
That's true.
I mean, if you were in Italy and you killed someone, well, they suspected that you killed someone, I'd be watching the news. And she called her and she was like, "Oh, I'm like, they keep questioning me. They keep questioning me." And her friend's like, "So do you have a boyfriend?"
Is Raph your boyfriend?
And she was like, "I just remember that this is gonna be the best year of your life." And I'm like,
Come on.
"Oh my god." I'm like, "Brett."
I really
It
like if we were in that situation and you said something to me like that, I would have been like, "Taylor, you understand I'm on trial for possible murder right now. You think I care about if this is my best? This is the worst year yet."
I think this is the best move that the police ever did, because I am so grateful that they got us that.
Yeah.
That
Honestly,
like,
we needed that.
she was like, "Amanda, remember, this is going to be the best year of your life. You're in Italy with Raphael." And I'm like, "Oh my god, Brett, they think she killed a woman."
Yeah.
I'd block your number instantly blocked.
Like Peppa Pig, can you whistle too? Like this click. You know?
It was
Like, never
horrible
mind,
and
girl.
very oblivious to how Amanda came from, honestly, like, very oblivious to the world, very I
Yeah,
don't wanna say lighthearted, but just oblivious.
very oblivious, yeah. So,
Yeah.
it was like the second day after the murder, right? Where police called in Raphael, but Amanda came with him and she sat in the waiting room where they called it, I think the corridor or something like that.
Mhm.
And
In the corridor.
yeah, and Raphael went in and they're like, "So tell us what happened, like your side of the story." And he sat there and he told like the same exact story that he had 2 nights ago, obviously. Um, and they're like, "Nope, you understand that Amanda is a slut, she's a whore, she's a slutty cow or some shit like that,
Yes.
and she's a liar." So he ended up getting mad, like, "Oh my god, the police know that she's a liar. She must be a liar. I just met this girl 7 days ago, you know?" So he started getting mad and twisting the words. And he was like, "She was with me, but she left and came back at 1 o'clock in the morning. And then we were together all night after that. So I don't know what could have happened, blah, blah, blah." Like, homie, don't change your
It's
story.
it shows how corrupt the police were, and that's the main thing, like, in this
Yeah.
entire thing, and I audibly gasped when I heard that.
Yeah.
Raph changed his story, and I wasn't surprised, like, I wasn't surprised that he changed it, but I was surprised at how he did, because I was like, "Oh, could he be telling the truth? Was he lying about Amanda in the first place? Was he not her alibi?" But
Yeah.
what really bugged me was how they questioned Amanda.
Yeah. I wrote down that Raphael snitched.
I
Like,
said Raph I said he distanced himself from Amanda,
yeah.
and because the police knew that he didn't know Amanda for very long, that he knew nothing about who she was as a person, because they said all they used to do was sit and talk and smoke weed and have sex. It was a very sexual relationship, and you don't really have time to really talk about your life when you're in the middle of a sexual relationship. And I think they
Right.
used that because they knew they could call her a slut. They knew that they could call her a liar, because he can't go out and say, "What have you been lying about?" He's in that room for hours being questioned, and they did the same thing to Amanda when she went in, but they targeted her instead of Raph.
Oh, yeah. When she brought up the fact that they hit her upside the head and said, "Remember, remember," and like kept hitting her, holy crap.
I had no words. All
I
I
was
said
I was
I
speechless.
all I wrote was physical abuse from police to remember, and when she did that, and when you're in such a traumatic thing, because of course, like, what the police thought was it was regressed into her head, what happened, because it was so traumatic, and then they thought by hitting her that it would go to the front of her head so she'd remember.
Right.
And she said she saw a street, her front door being open, and then she said she saw Patrick because she got a text message that night saying she didn't have to go to work, so she didn't have to leave Roth's house. So Patrick said, "Oh, you didn't have to work," and got a message that she said translated to, "Oh, I'll see you later," like, "Okay, I'll see you at, like, the next shift," you know what I mean? But the police saw it as, "I will meet you later," as in, "I will meet you to kill her," you know what I mean? That's what they saw. That's what they
Right.
believed, because because translation barrier, you know what I mean? It was lost in
Right.
translation. And
Right.
she told the police that she saw Patrick killing Meredith.
Right. She said that she heard Meredith screaming, and all she saw was Patrick. So Patrick must have killed her.
Yes. And it backfired on her because all three of them were arrested and charged for Meredith's murder.
Yep. So after she was arrested, her mom ended up coming and seeing her in jail. They put her and her mom in this tiny little office, and you can just hear the jail recording that they had of her, like crying and saying "mom," and like
Yes.
it sounded like an overwhelm of guilt when her mom came, or like disappointment, you know? At
Yeah.
that point, I was like, oh, this girl's definitely guilty. Ain't nobody cry like that in front of their mama unless they're guilty. Like, come on.
I I kind of understood that.
Yeah,
She was in an Italian prison. She was scared. She was just harassed by the police. What she says isn't really understood because she's American, and the pressure the that the press are putting on the police to find a killer so immense. Um, and Meredith's friends, when they were like waiting to see what would happen with Meredith and waiting to talk to the police, Meredith's friends kept saying, "Oh, I hope she didn't suffer. I hope she didn't suffer." And honestly, I would like I don't know what to do with myself when I'm grieving. Like,
right.
so she said to Meredith's friend, she goes, "Of course she did," to a slit.
Yeah, her throat was cut open. She's like, of course she
Like,
fucking suffered.
and I would say the same damn thing.
Yeah, like I'm not gonna keep sugarcoating bullshit for you. Like I'm not that type of person. I'm a very straightforward, blunt person where I'm like, you think she didn't suffer? Don't make her death less than what it was.
Exactly, she
Oh,
suffered. She
I hope she
was
didn't suffer. Like, come
I
on.
yeah, like, stop doing this. Your friend was murdered. But, like, I would say the same thing, and I didn't kill her. Something
Right.
else that really caught my caught my attention were when her mother went in and talked to her, she said she talked to the lawyers, which we don't meet the lawyers. The lawyers are not interviewed this entire time, which I
Right.
found very weird. But the lawyers told her mother that they said Amanda's been caught up in something bigger than her,
Bigger than her, yeah.
which I found really interesting.
Yeah. I don't know if
Like,
that's what they meant, like, by her charges, and
no.
her mom did bring up the fact of, like, "Hey, like, they just need to know the truth. If you did it, you need to come clean." And she's like, "No, mom, like, I really didn't." And she was
Yeah,
really
but
calm about it, you know? Being an innocent person and my mother thinking that I'm guilty or like my father, I would be mad. I'd be like, "You raised me to be a different human and you think I'm lying?"
I did too, but the thing that I caught from that was Amanda is not going to be treated fairly.
No.
She is in an internationally spread murder case right now.
Right.
This is so much bigger than just a murder,
Right.
and
She
that's
even had
shown.
a she even had a prison diary
Yeah,
in
and they
prison.
released it.
The press got their hands on it and was like, we're gonna take
And
this for ourselves."
the clear negligence of her privacy and her body too. They created a name for her, which she had on her MySpace. If I was on murder and and they found my Instagram, I'd be done. They'd be like, "Oh, this girl is the biggest slut in the world." They called her Foxy Noxy when that was her MySpace name. I
Yep.
cannot. And also the guards told her she was HIV positive when she wasn't.
Yeah, dude, she's like, "I don't wanna die," like, and now I'm HIV positive and I'm gonna die, like, this is not the life that I
It
wanted to live.
and even the press was like, "Okay, yeah, if she's not HIV positive, it's mind games. It's messed up." And this entire time and throughout that entire time where they were calling her Foxy Noxy, HIV positive, Patrick provides an alibi and gets released.
Yep.
So
He got out, and he was no longer convicted of the crime. He was wrongfully convicted,
So not only is she a slut, she's a liar.
Yeah. But of course she did put proof in there saying, like, they're showing me this text message and they're making me believe blah, blah, blah. They're making me believe this and that I did this with Patrick. It's just, something just doesn't add up.
No, but also, like I said, they were playing so many mind games with her, she doesn't even know what's real.
Right. Yep. So, how did they come across Rudy? I guess we can get into that now.
Yes.
Rudy Guerra, was that his name? Last name?
Yes. So while they were searching throughout the entire house, they came across a bunch of new evidence and they found out about a man that is very notorious for breaking into houses around the area.
Right. And they said that he was a night flyer. So he would
Yes.
fly to different countries at night.
Yeah. And he was not a stranger to Meredith. He met her the night before. They didn't have sex because they didn't have a condom. He said he used the bathroom, heard screaming, and saw a man outside.
Saw Amanda. The silhouette of Amanda, he said.
He doesn't say that until later. He said he
Oh.
only saw a man when he was talking to his friend, but they couldn't find him, so they asked his friend, "Hey, can you call him?" And he was like, "Sure." And he starts telling them, "Oh, I met her the other night before before the killing. Went back. We didn't have sex. He used the bathroom, which could
We
show,
can
oh,
tell.
yeah, we saw, don't worry." They showed the poop in the toilet. I was very
Yeah.
upset.
Yeah. It's kind of gross.
And he said, "I want to say one last thing. Amanda is innocent."
Amanda had nothing to do with this.
Yes. And then we meet Mr. Biscotti, which I love. Rudy's attorney.
Yep. And
And
Rudy had that set to just that, where Amanda was nothing to do with this, she wasn't a part of it, blah, blah, blah. But then he gets interviewed again, where I think this time he was in prison.
yeah,
And
it was during the trial.
and he said, I heard the screaming and I see Amanda's silhouette outside the window walking
Which
away.
I find, come on. When you're not in trouble, you're gonna say Amanda is not involved, is not there, but as soon as you get to the trial, you're like, "Oh wait, Amanda was there."
Yeah, do you think maybe he was like offered a reduced sentence if he said Amanda was involved?
No, I think he was pressed by the police.
Ah, could be.
Like, because he was sentenced to 30 years
And got reduced to 16 years.
with an appeal, which I have some stuff to talk about later
Yeah, me too,
involving
with the
that.
verdict.
Yes. But that's only like what, a couple months after the murder that they find Rudy, or was it weeks?
I think it was like a week or so.
Yeah.
Or yeah, I think it was like 2 weeks after the murder that they found him.
Yeah. And listen to this, guys. Not a couple months, not a year, but a year and a half after the murder, they have the full trial. I find that disgusting.
Yeah, the verdict happened 2 years after the murder.
Yes. They I had no words. I just put 1.5 years after murder. Disgusting.
Yeah.
And
During the verdict, Amanda got 26 years, while Raphael got 25.
Rudy got 30.
Reduced to 16.
But he got 30
30
before his
years.
appeal. And they got 26 and 25.
Yep.
How?
And they all said it was because it was a twisted sex game where, they had this toy that they were all going to use together as like the four of them. And Meredith was like, check your morals, Amanda. Like, this isn't right. And Amanda allegedly got in her face. This is what they aspired to be. And so Amanda was like, all right, let's turn this into a fun little game where we bully Meredith. And Rudy and Raphael were kind of competing to be, who was going to be Amanda's lucky man that night. So they ended up just taking turns of stabbing her and suffocating her.
And that was all speculation.
Right. That was the conspiracy that they made.
But honestly,
in order to pin the charges on all three of them.
Yeah. And honestly, I don't believe it one bit.
No, I don't either. Raphael had only had 2 other partners before Amanda. Does that seem like someone who's just started with sex that would want to do that?
It's like I get working your way up and finding what you're comfortable with, but you don't go from no sex to vanilla sex to somewhat kinky sex to murder. I mean, unless I'm doing it wrong. You know what I mean? Like, you don't like, and I don't think Amanda would be too upset with not sharing the guy she's been dating for 5 days.
Yeah.
All right.
No, that's like going from like 0 to 100 and just meeting someone for 5 days. That's outrageous.
At least save that for your 10-day anniversary.
Yeah, something crazy like that, right?
Yeah, and then it cuts to 3 years later.
Yep, so 1 year after the verdict, the appeal happens.
Yes, and
wait, so before we go to that, so the verdict happened, right? And Amanda's parents brought Amanda's sister to come to the verdict because they thought she was so innocent, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wrong. They convicted her of murder, and they were really, really upset.
I understandably, like...
Yeah. And then Meredith's family thinks, wow, we finally got them. This is so great, blah, blah, blah. And it all turns when we go to the verdict a year later. The appeal.
Yeah, the appeal. And this just like showed me how disgusting the press is. Because I wrote a quote down, and it says, clearly could use hair and makeup. Because they said because she wasn't blonde anymore. And she was pale and she didn't have hair and makeup. And they said, I guess they don't have that in jail. Are you kidding?
They also brought up the fact about how skinny she is, that she lost a lot of weight. Yeah.
Well, yeah, she's in jail.
Well, most
She's
people
been going
get
through
fat
hell.
in jail, but yeah.
Like, of course, like, her mental health is going to be shitty. She's not going to be putting makeup on. Like, first of all, if I was convicted for a murder that like called me a slut, I wouldn't put makeup on either.
I don't think I'd ever sleep again a day in my life if I was convicted of murder, let alone be trashed by the media.
Like, I could probably sleep, but I wouldn't be putting blush on. And then if she wore any makeup, they'd say, oh, she's a slut. Look at her looking nice at her trial. She just killed Meredith, and she's gonna pretend to be innocent. No, right. Thank you.
You're right.
If she did, she was damned. If she didn't, she's damned. Either way.
Right. So with the appeal, they decided to do a DNA, retest all the DNA to prove that the forensics did not do their job correctly.
They didn't.
At all. Not one freaking bit.
I noticed that from the beginning. From the beginning, you have people going in booties and hazmat clothes, but I noticed
didn't have them.
Yeah, but the lead prosecutor did not have anything on.
Did you see that one person bust through the window with their
shoe? Broke the window. How?
And then reached in and unlocked the door without gloves. You're entering a crime scene. You guys should be fully hazmated, especially if there's blood,
The police, honestly, were so lazy and chaotic. It was disgusting. And Dr. Carla is the angel.
She proved that the DNA on the handle of the knife was indeed Amanda's, but the DNA on the knife on the blade was not a match for Meredith's.
You see, what I don't understand is how they're like, oh, there was DNA of Amanda in Meredith's room, and oh, there was DNA on the knife. Amanda lived with Meredith.
Yeah, and for Amanda to say, you know, that's not possible, blah blah blah. How is that not possible? You guys live together, use the same utensils, use the same everything. You guys make dinner, right? Yeah, you could.
Yeah.
I would have 100% be like, yeah, of course there's DNA on that knife from both of us. We
And
live
then
together.
exactly. And then Dr. Carla also said that there was 2 other male DNA on the clasp, which also involved Roth.
Right.
But they weren't changing their gloves. Like, the 2 other male DNA could have been from
The
anyone.
police from the
Yes,
forensics.
anyone that touched it. And they said that they were not testing it by itself, but with other DNA of Meredith, which could have been transferred in the lab.
Right.
Lazy, lazy, lazy.
For sure. So then the appeal proved later that they were not guilty.
As they
And
should.
the people of Italy were pissed. People were
They were
outside
outraged.
rioting. There was a dude with like a megaphone saying, "This is not the end. There will be a Supreme Court, and you guys better bet on it because they're going to jail. They're going to rot in jail."
Yeah.
So after
And this is
that,
after 4 years in prison, 6 months in solitary for Raf.
yeah. So they finally got out. You know, I think Raph went to go live his life in Italy again, and Amanda went home to the States to be with her family, you know, trying to cope and deal with the fact, you know, I've been in prison. They proved me not guilty.
Yeah, dealing with the public reaction and the slut shaming she's getting. Everybody knows who she slept with. Everybody knows that she was scared of getting HIV and every single thing that she's done.
Right. Imagine going home and having to like face people that you wrote down their names and be like, well, I used a condom for this guy, but not this guy. You know? Like seeing them in public, being like, they told me I had HIV. I'm kind of sorry.
I was about to send you a letter and ask you if you had it, but I didn't.
Can you go to Planned
Imagine being
Parenthood
pen
real quick?
pals. Shut up.
I mean, it's
And then
true.
they're fined for like what, 2 years?
Uh,
They're
it
yeah,
was
they're fined for
6
2
years
years.
after the murder, so about almost 3.
Oh, yeah, about almost 3, like a little over 6 years, they said.
Yep.
The Italian court throws out their acquittal
Right.
and finds them guilty again due to circumstantial evidence and Amanda's behavior in relationships, which again is none of their goddamn business.
Right. All because
They
of
had
the way that she was acting, so it caused the Supreme Court.
like what they do? Did they look at In Touch magazine and see, oh, she's living her life. It's been 2 years. Like, no. I believe it was fully on the Italian public's outrage and the press.
Right. Yeah.
They were searching for something that they couldn't find.
So, for some reason, they get pulled into a Supreme Court. They were exonerated, not guilty.
Not guilty at all, as they should.
Right, 100%. And you can see, like, during the entire thing of her watching it on her MacBook at home with her family all there, they all jump for joy and they're so excited. Like, yes, you know, she's not convicted, blah, blah, this is great.
Fact that the fact that they weren't exonerated from the crime until 2 years after they brought the
After they were
case back.
proved not guilty.
Yeah. So throughout this entire thing, they were suspected, they were convicted, they had an appeal, they won that appeal, and then they were brought back, like, almost 3 years later, the case was brought back, and then 2 years later, they were exonerated,
Yep.
all
Fine.
because the Italian police couldn't do their job.
100%.
I wanna say I loved how Amanda and Raphael reacted to it.
Yeah, unfortunately, we didn't get to see Raphael's reaction, but Amanda's was pretty cool.
Yeah,
You know, she
I really like
instantly
that.
called him. She instantly called them and said, you know, this is great. You know, we're finally free, which is
And
crazy.
they're just 2 innocent people that
Same
share
life experience of
yes,
fear. But
and
Meredith's family wasn't too happy with it. They still believe that Amanda had a part in it. Um, which, you know, if that's your way to grief and that's your way to blame someone, sure. But at the end of the day, the evidence is there, the science is there.
Yeah. And in 2015, it was shown that there was flaws in the investigation.
Yep.
And the reason that they brought the case back was because of an increase in media attention for creating a search for those who are guilty. They need a guilty plea.
Yep.
They need someone who is guilty. They had a lack of evidence for Amanda and Raph, but they still had little evidence for Rudy, and he was still in jail even after Amanda and Raph were set free.
Yep. It's just not fair to them, you know?
No.
And in this sense, it's not fair to anyone that was involved. You know, Meredith's family, of course, they want to find the answer. In which, honestly, about that, by the way, this entire documentary, they didn't give any piece to Meredith but the fact of her family. You know?
Yes.
Like, I had to Google Meredith's name in order to find out more about her. She died at 21, and the cause of death was knife wounds and suffocation. You know?
Yeah.
Like, she was
She's
our age. She had a whole life to live, and even when, Amanda was exonerated, she didn't even say, she was like, "I'm just gonna go home and spend time with my family." She didn't even bring up the fact, of how sorry she is for
Oh,
Meredith.
I noticed that as well. Like, when she was in the Seattle airport, my only thought and my note on that, I didn't write anything else because I know how close she was to her family, was never mention Meredith. Because if I was exonerated for a crime that I didn't do, I would be like, I really hope the victim's family finds their peace. I hope that whoever did this is found. You know what I mean? Nothing.
I mean, Rudy was found. Rudy did admit to murdering her.
He didn't admit to murdering her, no.
I thought he did, though.
I
Because
don't believe so.
why didn't he appeal?
He appealed because he was there. He was the only, like, fit person they had there. He pooped in their toilet and didn't flush, and that's crime enough.
Justice for Rudy and his poop.
Justice for Rudy, honestly.
Kind of questioning, though, like, why didn't he get anything?
Honestly, I I don't know. I mean, he was released from prison.
Yeah, after 16 years.
Yeah. But I believe that Rudy murdered Meredith.
I
Um,
don't know.
Honestly, it mainly focused on Amanda.
Yeah, it was literally
It's Amanda Knox documentary, of course,
when
but
when I watched the documentary, like the first 5 minutes, I was like, "Oh, how is she still alive?" I thought she was the one that was murdered.
no,
I was like, "What?"
no, but I don't know. Honestly, blame I have 2 people that I truly believe are the downfall to this entire that could have had justice for Meredith but didn't, is the press and the Italian police.
Yeah, man, it
The
was whack.
press blames the court and the police, blame the press. And even, like, Nagini, um, the lead prosecutor said he was like, "People make mistakes. People mess up, but I don't find this to be a mistake. Like, oopsie. No. I find this to be an act of cowardness."
I just googled Rudy's name and saw a little bit, just skimmed through a bit of it. He said that at the very bottom of his Wikipedia, his first 36-hour release was in June of 2016 after 9 years in prison. So
Yeah.
they let him out for 3 days.
Yeah, he got day release. Yeah.
Actually, no, 2 days. Sorry, can't do
Yeah, he
math.
got day release.
Wow. But yeah, even in this Wikipedia thing, they don't even say how the fact like he'd never admitted to it. But yeah, I don't know. I really hope they eventually found the murderer. If not, like I understand why Meredith's family would be so upset.
Yeah. And like Amanda said at the end of the documentary, people love monsters.
Yeah.
And they will go to the ends of the earth to find them or to expose them,
Right.
and that they'll do it to anyone else. And I sat there and I was like, that is so true. Did
I
you see what Raphael's doing with his life now?
Yeah, he's a true crime person on TV in Italy.
He's an expert. You want to know why?
Because he was involved in a true crime.
I was going to say because he murdered someone, but sorry, Raph. If you're listening, I'm so sorry.
Listen, Raph,
That was
we're
just...
here for you. JK.
But Amanda graduated college in 2014. I don't think they said what she majored in.
I didn't catch that part.
But she graduated college in 2014, and she now advocates for wrongfully convicted, and she spoke out after Rudy was actually released from prison.
Right.
Raphael, as we know, was an engineer, tech engineer, as he gladly told us throughout the entire documentary. Thank you, Raphael, for that self-plug. He runs his own internet company in Bari, Italy, and like we said, he's a true crime expert for Italian TV. And our favorite man, Mignini, the worst prosecutor I've ever heard of in true crime history.
Ooh.
Which, that's probably not true. That's just for this podcast.
Just for this first episode.
He was promoted to general prosecutor. He was promoted.
Promoted!
How? How was he promoted?
Listen, I'm sure we're going to have many more of horrible prosecutors.
Oh, sure. That's the only reason that, like, I feel like so many cases are cold or closed are because of police and investigators and prosecutors that don't know how to do their job and just want to get a guilty party.
But not all police officers and not all investigators
Of
are
course.
the same, so we're not saying that.
No, I'm just saying in a lot of true crime.
Right. Case by case, some people, and even sometimes cold cases do get solved by, the rookie, the underdog of the unit, so.
Put me on a unit and I'd be like, they're guilty. They are. It's them. Our least favorite journalist. Well, not my least favorite, but in this case, the man that was always front page, the true villain, besides the murderer of this entire podcast, Nick Pisa. He's still a journalist. He's still sexualizing female suspects.
I'll
He is still a journalist. And I'm just going to conclude with my thoughts on the media, or that the true villain, besides the murder in this case, were the media and how they upset with the Italian police. But in United States, correct me if I'm wrong, Laura, but you're innocent until proven guilty. Is that wrong?
Nope, that is 100% correct. Due to our Constitution.
Due to our Constitution, but yet a lot of the journalists in the United States, well, Nick wasn't in the United States, he was British, but in any journalism, of course you want to get a spicy story, something very catching to the eye. But they blamed the Italian police, a lot of journalists, when they were the ones that were telling everybody she was guilty as soon as she started.
Yep. It's ridiculous. But
my question to you.
Yes.
Do you think Amanda killed her?
See, I'm like, there's like in my heart, not even my heart, I would just say like no. But, there's that thought in the back of your head that's like, I don't know, man, something seems fishy here.
Yeah.
What about you? What do you think? Same thing?
No. No doubt in my mind, I believe she's innocent.
I think she's 100% innocent.
Yes.
Okay.
There's not even a piece of me that believes that she's not.
No, I mean, and of course we don't know everything. We weren't there 100% for the trial, obviously. But
is she a weird girl? Yes.
So this was so far ago, and we have updated stuff now. So
exactly, and I mean, like, if we were reading the papers in 2007, I was 8, but if I was an adult,
yeah,
I would 100% be like, oh yes, like this girl is the devil.
Yeah,
what a slut. But now with knowing the entire story and knowing everything, I don't believe she's guilty. 100%. The only thing she's guilty of is having a kinky sex life, and that's not even guilty in my mind. Like, go off, sis.
Go off, sis. Yep. So that would conclude our Amanda Knox. This is our first episode of the Blood Spill podcast. If you guys enjoyed this episode, we will definitely have more coming out with even more juicier stories.
I just want to thank you all for listening.
Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel because we're eventually going to get this out on possibly Spotify and Apple podcast app if we can. We're going to try doing the things to make that work. So subscribe,
like, and share.